Welcome to the Primary Sources in Teaching Online webinar series, brought to you by the TPS Western Region at the Metropolitan State University of Denver in partnership with the TPS Teachers Network. My name is Keith Patterson. I'm the Associate Director of the TPS Western Region, and I will be your host tonight. Kyle Claybaugh and Crystal Payne will be helping in the chat, and please reach out to them if you have any questions or have any comments. For those of you who would be interested in receiving a professional development certificate for your participation, we'll provide a link at the end to fill out a brief reflection and where you can send the certificate. Our two-part program tonight, entitled Primary Sources in Google Classroom, will be presented by Kelly Jones-Wagy. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Kelly.
To figure out how to do all of this. And so tonight, we're going to go through and do how to introduce primary sources and use Google Classroom. So if you see me look to kind of my left here, it's because I'm working off of two screens to pull some things over for you. So we'll go ahead and get started on how to get Google Classroom set up. So to get started on Google Classroom, I don't know how many of you guys have used Google Classroom. If you have questions or anything like that, you can feel free to kind of pop them in the chat, and then if I need to get interrupted or anything like that, feel free to do that. And if I need to stop and answer any questions, please feel free to do that so that I can slow down or go faster or whatever else you need me to do. So Google Classroom has a couple of ways that you can go about using it. One of them is that if your district has it set up, you can go ahead and use your district setup for Google Classroom. You can also set it up independently. So there's lots of different ways that you can go ahead and go through. So Google Classroom in and of itself, this little icon that you have for Google Classroom. And so when you set up a Google Classroom and you have it all set up, there's different ways that you can do it. And so I'm going to pull over just kind of what that looks like. So here's the Google Classroom icon. And when you have a Google Classroom set up, and I have several Google classes set up, this is the one that I'm going to work off of today. So Google Classroom, to get one set up, all you have to do is push this little plus symbol here, and you can click Create a Class. And once you have the Create a Class, you type in the name of the class that you want. You have the option of putting in the section, subject, room. Obviously, the room is probably wherever in your house you are at the moment. And then click the Create button. And once you've done that, it's going to give you a code. And the students will be able to see that code that's in there. And so they'll be able to just type in whatever that code is. So when you click on a class, that class code will always show up right here. So this is the one I'm going to work off of today because it doesn't have my actual students in there because, privacy laws and all those other fun things. So once you've created that code, you just need to give it to your students. And when they're in Google Classroom, they'll just click this little plus button and click Join Class. And they'll type in that code, click join, and they're automatically in your class. So they're there, they'll type in their name, and they're in Google Classroom. All they'll need is a Gmail. If your district has it set up, they're probably hooked up through Gmail anyway. So once you're in Google Classroom and you have a class set up, you're all set to go. So that is how Google Classroom is set up. It's really easy to do. Your students probably won't be automatically put it into your Google Classroom unless your district does it for you. So that one does take a little bit of work just to make sure that they get in. I made a little YouTube video to tell my students how to do it, and I screencast it. It was about 2 minutes of here's how you get into my Google Classroom so that they knew, because a lot of my students had never gotten into Google Classroom before. So I did a little tutorial where I screencast it for them, but it was really easy and none of my students seemed to have any issues getting into it. So there was that, and getting into Google Classroom. Does anybody have any questions on just creating a Google class, or are we good to move on?
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything quite yet, so I guess
awesome. Perfect.
Continue. Thanks.
Fantastic. So once you have your Google class kind of set up, there's a lot of different things that you can do in it. Once you're in, you can create an assignment, you can give quizzes. And so I'm going to go through kind of how I have my class set up. And so I work off of this. Basically, I just kind of created a little folder in my online drive. So this is the one that I have created for here, but I basically created a folder. And I kind of stole from my kid's kindergarten teacher, because I have a 6-year-old who's in kindergarten right now, and they started online learning before we did. And so she had created this little Google slideshow for their lessons. And so she put everything on a Google slide, and I thought it was brilliant because the idea is that they went through like, here's what you're going to do, and then here's your next thing and your next thing and your next thing. I was like, that is brilliant, because that means I know everything that I'm supposed to do as a parent to follow through, which also meant that if I did that for my high schoolers, then they would know you're supposed to do this and then this and then this. So I did that for my high school kids. And so I put, for the week of, this is what you need to do. And so at the beginning of every week, I had the list of here's everything that you need to do this week. And so I gave them, we have a little Remind 101 so that they can text me back and forth because they're excellent at text messaging. But these were all the things that they needed to do in the first week for my US history class. And so I put everything in there. I have a rant wheel, which they know what that is, but it's pretty much current events. And I do it at noon every Tuesday through Friday. And so I have a bunch of kids that show up just to learn current events. Then I make a little video for them every week that's a couple minutes long to say hi and tell them what they're supposed to do. And then it's the list of everything that they're supposed to do within this Google slideshow. And it links to all of their notes that they're supposed to have. So their PowerPoint is there, and along with anything, any of their readings that they're supposed to have, any videos that are supposed to be there. So everything is in this Google slideshow that they're supposed to do, and then their assignments are in there. And so that's the way that I kind of had walked them through everything so that they didn't have to click out of this Google slideshow. And then I put it into the Google Classroom. And so when I put it into Google Classroom, there's a couple of ways that you can do it. So when you open up your Google Class, what you'll have is you usually just have this blank thing, and it's a stream right in here. And so under classwork, you just hit create, and you can do material. And so you can give it a week. Okay, so you can go week of, March, or I guess we're in April now. Things are blending. April 13th. And so once you're in there, you can start to add things from your Google Drive. And so if I go into my Drive, I can find where I'm at here. And so I can go in and I can add the little slideshow right in here. And I can decide if I want to post it now. I can schedule it to post at a certain time. So a date and a time if I want it to be there. Or I can just save it as a draft if I want to save it for later, because I'm not ready for the students to see it. So if you save it as a draft, they won't see this until you're ready for them to see it. And so you can build stuff early and save it, and then or you can schedule it to come out later. So all of those things are available for you to kind of build everything into your Google Classroom. And so if you want to build everything as kind of a material and put it all in there, you're absolutely able to do that within Google Classroom. So that's one way to kind of build materials in there. And so that's an absolutely really easy way to put everything into like a weekly folder for them. One of the other things that you're able to do within it when you're kind of creating this Google Classroom is that if you're in here and you want them to look at something like primary sources in this kind of week of, I can go in under this draft and I can click edit. And if I want them to say, I want them to analyze a primary source, I can go in and click this little under add. And if I want to add like a link, and I pulled up a couple of them. We just did our African American civil rights stuff. And so I actually had my students go in and analyze some primary sources. I didn't copy the whole link, sorry. I missed part of the link on there when I copied it over. So I can have them go in and I can just have them take a link. And when I do it, I can have them, and I can add this link in here. And now you can see on the screen that they've got this link from the Library of Congress. So when the students use it, then they can actually go in and see the link that you've got, and they can click on it. It will take them directly to the Library of Congress. If I want them to just analyze specific sources, and especially right now, I don't want to give them stuff that's going to be, you have to click on a bunch of different things, or I want you to click out of here. I can put the links directly onto my Google Classroom site, and then I know that they're all getting to the exact same thing at the exact same time. And then I can go in and I can just save it as the draft again. So I can go in and edit it there. And so that way it's all right there under that list of materials if I want them to go in and take care of that. So it's pretty easily done where I can go in and edit anything that I want, one that's in that draft form especially. And even after you post it, it's really easy to go in and edit stuff. So if you need to make changes, like you notice that there's a typo or anything else, you can go in and edit things, and it's pretty easy to do from there. So that's kind of the way that you can go in and you can create materials and things like that within it. And it's really easy to make sure that all the students have all of their stuff in one spot. So that's the materials piece of it. And I am going to go in and show you guys how to create an assignment within Google Classroom. So there's a couple ways that you can create an assignment. There's a quiz option, there's a question option, and then there's just the assignment option. So an assignment's pretty easy to create. Okay, you can title it whatever you want. Okay, so if I want to go in and title something like primary source, okay, analysis, okay, and I want to add, okay, and you can go in and you can add all kinds of stuff. You have it within your Google Drive, or you can create something from a Google Doc or a Google Slideshow. So you can actually make it out of anything that you've already got. Or you can just create a brand new document within Google Drive. And so you can make it as you go. Okay, once you've created it, and I'm going to go ahead and add something that I've already got just because I know I've already done it. Okay. And so I can go in and I can see all the stuff, and you can go through all kinds of stuff within my drive that I have. So within my online learning, I know within US history, I have a million things that I've already created for it. Okay. But I've created stuff within the different weeks. I have learned not to use Google Forms. I have tried this. And I have found that there is a really big problem with using Google Forms, which is the students first can't go back and edit Google Forms when I make assignments out of it. So I would highly recommend not using Google Forms when you do an assignment. The other thing I found is if the students forget to hit submit on their Google Forms, you will get the assignment anyway, but they won't know that they turned it in. So it will show up as missing in your Google Classroom. But they will have, like when you actually go to make the spreadsheet to see what they've done, you'll have it from them. So I had students who ended up doing an assignment twice because they thought they did it and they didn't hit the submit button, and then they ended up doing it a second time. I had 2 different assignments from the same kid a couple of different times. So I had a bunch of students who swore they did something. It showed up as missing on my side because it was on a Google form, and they can't go back and edit anything. So I would definitely recommend against using Google Forms to do anything. But I'll go ahead and pull up this kind of learning target from week 2 when you make an assignment. And what you can do here is you can either have students just view a file, but this is my favorite part, is you can make a copy for each student. And what that will do is it will take a blank form that you have created, and it will make a different one. So when you make stuff in Google Drive, a lot of times you share it with students and then you ask them to make a copy of it into their Drive. Google Classroom will do that for you. And so what will happen is that instead of you asking students to go in and save stuff to their Drive and reshare it with you, instead what it does is that it will make a copy for every single student. You can give it a due date, and so you can pick what day you want it to be due, and you can even pick a time for it to be due. And so you can decide if you want to assign it, or again, you can schedule it, or you can save it as a draft, and you can pick the number of points and all of those things on there. Okay. And so you had lots of different ways you can do it. If you click the originality report, at least in my district, it only lets me do that 3 times total for the semester. So then I can't use the originality reports. Other districts, I think they let you do more, but mine I only get to do 3. So that's going to be up to you, but you can also attach a rubric to stuff if you want. So you have that option. I'm going to show you a fun little tool for rubrics too in just a little bit, but there is that. So That's kind of how to attach an assignment to stuff, and I'll just go ahead and click assign. An originality report is basically like running stuff through turnitin.com. So we'll actually compare stuff like whether or not somebody has cheated on something or not. So it will actually run it through whether someone's been plagiarizing or not. But it only lets you do that a handful of times, so you can't do it on everything. So you do have to be kind of careful how you do it. I'm not actually sure on that answer about whether an originality report is only available if it's offered through your district. So there's another option as far as when you want to do, I'm going to show you guys next how to do a quiz assignment, which is where you do want to use Google Forms. Because what they do on a quiz assignment is it lets you do a blank form if you're going to do it, and you have this option of what's called grade importing. And this one is cool. So you can either create a blank quiz or you can add one from one that you've already created. And so I have a quiz that I actually just gave my students, which was this one. So I gave them a quiz because they had a thing over Jackie Robinson and civil rights. So you can do this in Google Forms. And when you do that, what happens is it gives you the option to actually go through, and I'm going to go ahead and just assign this real quick so you can see what it does. But if you do this in Google Forms and you create it in Google Forms, what you'll see is this is the quiz that I had created for my students. But the more important part is that when you go back into your Google Drive and you go into that quiz, these responses right here, it's got this fun little tab up at the top. And once the students actually submit stuff, what will happen is when you click this little button here, it will make a spreadsheet. And you want to create a spreadsheet once the students have actually submitted responses. You won't see anything on this one. But what it will do is it will actually make a spreadsheet of all the student responses for you. And if you gave it an answer key, which you can do in here, is you can actually go in and you can give it an answer key when you make your quiz, is that you can go in, you can make an answer key, and it will grade your quiz for you, especially if you have multiple choice. You can also do short answer and tell them what the short answer is. And so you can go in and make a quiz on Google Classroom, and then it will grade it for you, and you can just import the answers if you want. So if you need to do that, you have that option. So there is kind of all of that as far as creating assignments and quizzes within Google Classroom. Do I need to pause and answer any questions or anything else? I think I missed some stuff in the chat. I caught a couple of little questions, but I don't know if I caught them all.
Yeah, Kelly, I've been looking through, and I think some of the questions, I think you went back, there were some questions about, you know, some of the fine points of forms and quizzes and things, but I think between other people answering other people's questions and what you brought up, I think we got it covered.
Okay.
Looking back through. There's some stuff about how originality report works, if that's tied to your district, or if you can just go out and get that on your own. I don't know if you even know that.
I don't know the answer to that one. I wish that I did, but I am not entirely certain on the answer to that.
I just searched it real quick and it looked like it should be available to everyone, but I know that the district may tie you down on that. So just best just to go check and see.
Yeah, I would double check then, yeah, because I just don't know. So.
But that's all I have.
Okay, perfect.
I'll continue watching.
Perfect. Okay, so from there, so that's the kind of creating a quiz within Google Classroom. And then as far as just kind of the simplifying online teaching part, that is why I use the slideshow, the Google Slides part. And the reason that I use that is because it walks the kids through step by step in the order that I want them to do it. And then they can just click on every link. So I just link everything into that single slideshow to make sure that they catch everything step by step. The other thing that I am going to show you real quick on creating things within Google Classroom is you can create a question within there, which is actually a discussion. So if you want students to try and discuss things online, you can create a question within Google Classroom as well. So if you want them to discuss anything that they've read or done on Google Classroom, you can. When you do this and you have the students can reply to each other, they cannot see each other's responses until after they have replied. So when you type a question into here and you add it to Google Classroom, again, you have the same due dates, all of those things. Once you've done that, you actually they can't see anything that anyone else has replied to until after they have posted something. You can add in links and things like that. You can put files, you can put YouTube videos. So you can ask them to watch a video and reply to that video if you want. You can put in a primary source and ask them to answer a question on that primary source. So you can do all of those things in an online discussion. And so you can do all of that here if you would like, but they can't see what other people have said until they themselves have posted a response. And then they can reply to each other once that happens. Or if you don't want them to reply to each other, depending on their age or depending on the group of kids that you have, you can uncheck that box where they can only reply to the single post, and that's it. They would still be able to see what other people have said after they have posted, but they can't reply to each other if you're worried about that piece of it. So that is an option as well. Okay, so that's kind of the overview of what you can do inside of Google Classroom, right? So from there, the next thing would be Google Meet, which is the way to do face-to-face conversations, not on Zoom or Google Teams or anything else. And this is the little icon for Google Meet. It looks similar to Google Hangouts. And this is actually the way that I have been meeting with my students. And I meet with my students about 4 to 5 days a week, depending on the class. And I have 5 classes. So, and I see students just about every day of the week on Google Meet. And it has been significantly more secure than a lot of other things and a lot easier for them to get to because they're able to use their cell phones to get to it. And they haven't seemed to have any real major technology issues with Google Meet. And so it's not the same thing as Google Hangout because it goes through their Google Classroom. So I'm going to show you guys how to set up Google Meet and also how to be able to set up an individual appointment calendar with students on Google Classroom. Okay, so when you're on Google Meet, this is what the icon looks like. And so using Google Meet, there's a couple of different things that you can do that you can't do in other scenarios. But what you can do is you can set up spontaneous meetings. So if you need to just talk to a student, walk them through, you can do that. You can schedule Google Meet meetings and you can make sure that students are able to get in. It's the same code every single time to get in. You can still do screen sharing through it. And there are some differences between Google and Zoom and Microsoft Teams. So there are some differences that I'm going to show you guys as we go through on Google Meet. And so when you're in your classroom, I'm going to click back out of this so that you can kind of see if I can get it to close. So when you're in Google Classroom, there are a couple of different things that you'll see. And so Google Meet is this little icon right here. Okay. And so what it looks like is, and it's going to tell me that I can't use my camera, obviously, because I'm on it with Zoom right now. But this is what it looks like when you're in. So you can either join or start a meeting. This would be if you're just going to do a spontaneous meeting on Google Meet. And so when you're going through and doing a Google Meet, what you can do is you can just click into join or start a meeting. And once you're in there, you can say who you want to add to that meeting. And so you can add to the meeting and you're usually in pretty good shape. You just type in the email of the person that you want to meet with, and that's it. So that's the extent of a spontaneous meeting. And once you're in, it will function just as every other Google Meet does. And so that part is relatively easy to do. It's the scheduling meetings that is probably the best part of Google Meet as far as I'm concerned, which is the stuff that you can do, and you have to do it, however, inside of Google Calendar. So I'm going to pull this over real quick so that you all can see what Google Calendar looks like. Now, it is not the same as the Google Calendar that is in Google Classroom. So I'm going to kind of shuffle over. So Google Classroom has its own little calendar that's in here. So if you click over here and it's got a calendar, this is the Google Calendar itself. Okay, and this is the one that is not going to work for Google Meet. So you can't use this calendar because you won't see anything on it. So that's not the one that you want. You actually need to go in and go to the actual Google Calendar itself, so not the Google Classroom calendar. So you want Google Calendar itself. And I've unclicked the buttons for all of my classes except for the one that we're in so that you don't see the explosion of colors on my calendar right now. But what you'll do is if you want to set up a Google Meet with your students, what you can do is you just click anywhere on the calendar that you want to set up a meeting. Okay? And you can set up your meeting and you can decide how long it is and things like that. But once you're into the little more options, you can click on this add conferencing part and you can choose this Hangouts Meet. And it lets up to 250 people in if you want. And then you can choose which class you want to meet with. So if you want to meet with whichever class it is, okay, you can add it, and it will automatically add it to the students' calendars. So it will go into their calendars if you want. You can decide how many permissions that they have once they're in there. The other thing is you have the option to let it repeat a certain number of days. So if you want it to repeat every single day where you want to meet with your students every single day, then you can click on it to meet every single day until the end of the semester if you want. So if you want it to go all the way until the end of May, you can let it go all the way till the end of May or the end of June or whenever it is that you get out. So once you've done that, okay, and you hit save, you will have a meeting every single day for that hour with that group of students, and it will show up. And for them, once they're in their calendar, they literally just have to hit join Hangouts Meet, and it will be there. And so that option will be available to them every single day to be able to click in. The other option is if they can't get in for some reason, they can actually join by phone and call in, and at least they can hear it even if they can't see it on the on their video. The only thing that they'll have to do if they're on their phone is they'll have to download the Google Meet app. And so that is the only thing that they'll have to do if they're on a phone instead of on a computer. The other thing is because I have like multiple US history classes and I didn't want to meet with them all separately. I didn't want to meet with both my 3B and my 4A separately. I can actually go in, once I've saved the event the first time, you can actually go in and under more actions, you can copy it to different classes. And once you've copied it to different classes, what it will do is that, I'm going to go ahead and save it real quick to just a random thing. Now it's showing up here and you'll see under the meeting, when I'm in there, the code to get into that Hangouts is the exact same for both classes, which means every kid has that same code. So you could actually have all of your classes come to the exact same meeting with no problem. And it's really easy to do if you're going to do it in a Hangouts Meet. And so no one, especially if you're going through the district, I know in my district, they cannot get in without a district email. So the only way in is if they're using an outside email, I actually have to allow them in. So it will tell me like this person wants in, and I have to allow them in from the waiting room at that point. So unless they're using a district email. So even if they have the code to get in without a district email, they can't get into my Google Hangout. So it does allow for a little bit of extra line of security there for them. So they can't get in without that. So that helps quite a bit as far as that piece. The other thing that you can do in here is that you can actually set up a one-on-one appointment with students, which is really nice to see. And so it allows you to, if you want, you'll see this thing where it lets you do appointment slots. And so this appointment slots, if you wanted to meet with students for, set up an appointment where you wanted to say, and you're going to do it, let's not do it for midnight because it's going to be hard to see on the calendar later. But if you have like an hour and a half from like 10 to 11:30 that you want to meet with students every 15 minutes, and you're going to let them sign up every 15 minutes for those slots. You do have to go into the week view to be able to do this, but what it will do is that you can send, if you go to the appointment slots for the calendar, what it will do is you can send students this link right here, and once they have that link, they can actually click on it and they will be able to make appointments in those 15-minute slots. So all you need to do is send them this link, and then they can make appointments in those 15-minute slots. So I had a hard time with some of my students. They're really struggling with online learning right now, especially the students in my US history class. And so I actually set up with them one-on-one meetings for like 10-minute slots where we can just talk about their grade and everything that they need to do to pass the class for the semester. And so we set up these meetings and said, okay, here's what I need you to do between now and the end of the semester. And it's like a 10-minute slot. They went in, they signed up for the day and the time that worked for them. And so then any kid who didn't sign up for it, those are the kids I knew I needed to give a phone call to. And so then I started calling kids. I'm like, you have not signed up for a meeting yet. I need to talk to you. And so then I was able to know which kids I needed to call and which kids I was going to have a meeting with this week. And so I had either a phone conversation or I have a Google Meet 10-minute appointment set up with just about every kid in my US history class where we can go through because they had been able to sign up for those little 10-minute appointment windows. So that has helped quite a bit to be able to do that on Google Meet, to have those little 10-minute appointment windows where you can go in and do that. So those are kind of the advantages of Google Meet. It does allow you screen sharing when you're on Google Meet. So there's an option to share your screen. When you're in there, what it will let you do is you can share just your whole screen. You can also share just a single app. So if you don't want to share everything on your screen and you only want to share your PowerPoint, you can do that. If you don't want to, if you only want to share just like bits and pieces, or if you do want to share everything on your screen, you have the option to do that as well. So there are some differences in it in comparison to some of the other stuff that's out there. So it just depends on what you want to do. But the nice thing is it's all in one spot as far as I was concerned, because Google Classroom worked really well with Meet. So I didn't have to have them sign up for Zoom, and I didn't have to have them sign up for Google Classroom. And I was just trying to keep it all in one spot because I was really worried about my students having to download too many apps and too many different things while they were still trying to navigate online learning, which is incredibly hard. You know, online learning was hard for me when I was in college, and let alone my students in the middle of a global pandemic. So, you know, it's one of those things where the less I could have them do to deal with the technology, the better off I thought they were going to be. And so, you know, if I could just put everything in one spot, that was kind of my goal. And so I didn't want to make them do all of the different things. And so most of them have figured out, because they knew how to use Google Docs, they knew how to use Google Slides, they knew how to use all of those pieces. And so if I could get them all in one spot, I figured I was in a better place. So do you guys have any questions on Google Meet so far? Did I miss anything? I have not kept an eye on the chat for this one.
No, I think you're doing a good job. There was a lot of back channel with some extra tools. There was a question, and Laura just put some information up, but just a possibility of Mike covering the whiteboard tool. There was some interest in that.
Okay.
Some resources are getting posted, so if that was not part of the plan, that's fine. We can back channel it. But other than that, I think it's just kind of been some nice, rich discussion about extensions and little bits and pieces and tips and tricks around what you've been talking about. So
awesome. Okay. Well, I will try to go to that if we can. At the end, if we've got time and that kind of thing, I'll try and go over to the whiteboard tool. If not, then that's okay. I'll try to make sure. I hadn't planned on doing it, but if we can, I will. Before we get to that, I will get to the rubric tool real quick, which is this one, which is Doctopus and Goobric. And this is a little bit more in depth, I think is the word that I'm looking for, on how you put it all together within Google Classroom. Because this is the part of Google Classroom where if you're trying to grade with a rubric, you know, a lot of times when we give students a writing assignment, we have the writing assignment and we have the rubric, and then we grade with the rubric and we hand it back to them so that they can get the feedback. And that is really hard right now, to be able to do that, to be able to show them the rubric about where they need to improve at the moment. And so even though, you know, depending on how your school is grading and all of those things, you know, one of the things that we want to try to be able to do is at least give students as much feedback as we can on, you know, the things that they are turning in, so that they know where exactly it is that they are, if we can do that, especially if they're going to put in the effort in online learning, to give them the feedback that we can give them. And so Doctopus and Goobric are a really cool way to be able to do that, and for them to be able to see where they are on, especially on their writing. And so these are the two icons that you are looking for in Google and in Google Classroom to be able to do this. So there's a couple of steps that you have to follow in order to be able to get this to work. So you do have to download an add-on in Google, and you have to work in Google Chrome in order for this to work. So you do have to be in Chrome, but you have to download the Doctopus add-on, and this is what it looks like. So if you're looking for the icon, it's this one right here. So you have to download the Doctopus add-on, and it looks like this little octopus tentacle is holding a piece of paper. Okay. And when you give an assignment on Google Classroom, make sure it's in a Google Doc. Okay. And then you're going to create a spreadsheet. And I'm going to walk you through what all this looks like in just a second. But these are the directions. So you're going to open and launch Doctopus, ingest a Google class, select the class and assignment, and then click ingest assignment. I'm going to show you what all this looks like so that you're not going, what is she doing? So what you'll do is in your Google Classroom, and I'm going to go back to my Google Classroom. Okay. You have to create an assignment. So I made one already, and I borrowed some staff members to make sure that they were my people to do this. So you see that I have 3 people in here. So I created an assignment that was just called essay to make sure that this would work. And so you can see it's just a blank Google Doc. Okay, so I just made an assignment called essay. It's a blank Google Doc at the moment, so that my students could write an essay for me. Okay, and so within this Google Doc, okay, this is where I would want my students to do their writing at. Okay, and so that is what I'm currently looking for them to, where I'm looking for them to write. Okay, is within this essay. And so I need to make sure that I pull up the correct. There we go. This is the one that I want. So within my Google Drive, okay, I did make a rubric so that you can see it. And the rubric part is going to be kind of important because you have to make sure it's set up correctly. You do have to put it inside of a Google Sheet in order to get this to work. And so you have the titles have to be over onto the left-hand side. Okay, so these are the titles that we have for our writing rubric. And then at the top, you have the number of points that they're worth. You do have to leave this 1A section blank. So make sure that you leave this part blank. And then whatever your categories are, okay, this is totally up to you how you're going to fill in the rest of this. But this just happens to be the writing rubric that we used for the government class that I teach. So this is the one I have that's put in here. So here's the writing rubric that I'm going to show you guys how to work with for now. Okay, so you have this writing rubric, and then you're just going to make a blank spreadsheet, which is all this particular one is. So I have this blank spreadsheet. There's nothing on it. Okay, and I just titled it Goobric Example so that you know how it works. And so I'm going to launch my add-on. So under add-ons, okay, it gives you an option. So I had already downloaded Doctopus because you don't want to sit here and watch me, just download it. And you click launch. And it's going to take a second because it's working, and you can see it working at the bottom. Okay, and Doctopus does take a second. You're going to see this weird little icon pop up. Okay, And what it's trying to do is it's searching through what I've got. Okay, and I'm going to select a mode. And you can do this with Google Drive, but I don't have to because I have Google Classroom. I'm going to ingest a Google Classroom assignment. Okay, and I'm going to select my class, which is the one that I've been working on. This is TPS webinar class, and select my assignment, which is my essay. Okay, and it's pulling all of my essays, and I click ingest assignment. Okay, and none of the 3 people actually turned it in because I didn't actually ask my fellow staff members to write essays for me, but that's okay, it doesn't matter. So now what it's done is it's gone through and it has found, okay, all 3 essays that my students have written. Okay, so I have 3 different essays and it's attached a little link for them in a spreadsheet for me. And then what I want to do is I'm going to attach a Goobric. Okay, and I'm really glad this is being recorded so you guys can all go back and look at directions later. But I'm going to attach a Goobric, which is that rubric that I just showed you. And so I'm going to go in and find the little rubric that I just had. Okay. No, I don't want to make a new one. It's fine. Okay. And I'm going to attach my rubric. Doctopus likes to work a little bit slow because it's working through a whole lot of stuff. And what it's really doing is it's actually attaching that rubric to every individual student. And so as it's working through all of this, what it's actually going to do is it's going to make a new link for me to be able to use. So now it's got 2 things. It's got the actual student one that's right here. But then what it has is it's got this little Goobric link, okay, where I can go through and I can assess the document. So when I click on that one now, what it has up at the top is it has now my rubric here at the top, and it has, okay, the actual little essay that my students have written down here. So I can go in and I can say how many points they got. So if they got, say, 3 points for addressing the question, and on their thesis statement they got 3 out of the 4, and on analysis maybe they got 2, okay, they got 4 on documentary evidence, okay, 3, and on organization they got 4. Okay, you have the option here to type comments in. You can also record comments if you want to talk, to be able to do that. So you can actually record your comments to the students if you want to say something to them. And when you're done, okay, you can either go to next if you just want to move on to the next student, or you can submit. Once you submit, the students are going to be able to see your feedback. And if you hit submit, what will happen is it'll move on to the next one. And I'm going to go in now and I'm going to go back and show you guys what your students are going to see when they do it. So I'm going to go back into my Google Classroom real quick so that you can now see what the students see. So here's my little essay. Here's the one that I just hit submit on. And now in her essay, here's the actual rubric that I just graded. And she's going to see the rubric. And remember I said that she got, 3 out of 4. So it will highlight everything that they got on there. And then you can type your comments in as well. You can give them the option if you want to give stuff back to you if you want them to redo it or not. And so you'll have the option if you want to let them redo stuff and send stuff back and forth and things like that. Okay. So that is how Doctopus works on the rubric side of it. And you can do all kinds of, rubrics. You can keep them small. You have the option to only grade certain parts of the rubric. So if you only want to grade, one portion of it, you can do just one portion of it and send it to them on that. And so you can go back and forth. You can regrade on the rubric, where if they did one, it will actually attach a second version of the rubric. So if they fix something, they'll get both versions of the rubric on the same writing. So, all right, are there any questions on Doctopus and Goobric and all of those things?
I had a question. So do students get quote notification when a teacher submits the feedback?
Yeah, they should. So once you hit submit, there's a little button for you to click on there for you to be able to, let me go in here. So you can click this little button here, also email scores to the person, so they'll get an email. As long as you click that button, that they'll get it. So if you unclick it, they will not. So it's up to you.
That looks good. And the only other thing I see here is just asking about Google Meet. If you have to be a Google school, from my understanding, yes, you do have to be a Google school or be a Google Apps Suite person. Though it looks like you can join meetings, you just can't start meetings. If anybody knows differently, say so.
I believe if your school has Google Meet, or if your school has Google Classroom, and they do have to enable Google Meet. And right now, I know that they are offering all of the Google Classroom and Google Meet premium features for free at the moment if your school has Google Classroom. If your school does not have Google Classroom and you set it up yourself, you still should have Google Meet as an option right now. I believe that they are offering it for free, but don't quote me on that. But I think that they are right now offering Google Meet for free if you set up Google Classroom at the moment. And you should get all the premium features at the moment. Whether or not that will carry through later, I'm not entirely certain. But I believe right now that they are letting you use Google Meet as long as you're in Google Classroom. The only thing about it, I think that you have to do is you do have to make sure that you're using Google Classroom. If you're signed up through like a private account and you're not in Google Classroom when you set it up, they'll make you use Google Hangouts, and that's not nearly as secure. So Google Hangouts does not have the same security features. So I do know that part.
Thank you. Somebody also did have a question about so if they don't have if your students don't have access to email, will they still get those notifications? We're kind of hopping back and forth, but
that's okay. So if they don't have access to email, my guess is they probably won't get the notifications because they're only going to get it through the Google Classroom. So unless it's enabled for them to get messages some other way through Google Classroom, but they're going to have Google Classroom. They're going to have it through a parent email or something.
Yeah, that's what the chat room is agreeing with you. So
okay, yeah, because the only way to get into Google Classroom is through an email.
There's a lot of nuance to all this, yeah. But
yeah, they're going to have an email to get into Google Classroom, so they'll have to have a Gmail.
Yeah, a lot of this,
or at least an associated one, yeah.
A lot of this is just reach out to your peers, and somebody else has probably been through this pain already. So, yeah, reach out to your peers.
So, I would say that this is probably like if your district has no association with email at all. Like I know that like my district has emails for all the kids, but like my son's district, I just learned this. Apparently they all have an email with their student ID number through Gmail. I did not know that until like last week.
Yeah, my daughter's in the same district, and yes, they all do have an email address, whether they told you or not. Yep.
Yeah, they didn't tell me that. I learned that last week.
Yep.
So yeah, so Yeah, so they have it set up, and I had to figure that out last week to get my kid signed into something. So I was like, oh, my kid has an email address. Look at that. And it's like student ID number. So, and it goes through Google Classroom. So learn that. So they may very well have one. And our district just didn't tell us because he's in kindergarten. So, but you should be able to invite students into Google Classroom that don't have a Gmail address if you're a Google district. Yes, they should be able to, because like the school district I work in, we don't have, like the kids don't have a Google, like an actual Google, their Gmail address. They have our district email address. So all of my students use their Gmail address. So that's how they do theirs. And so they all use their school district email, and I am requesting they all use their school district email because it makes my life easier, and I just want to make sure that I'm kind of covered by making sure they're using their district email, and that's how my communications are going. I just kind of want to make sure that we're going through like appropriate channels as much as possible. It isn't this incredibly hard time to be a teacher. So let's see. As far as how do I help students who just can't figure out Google Classroom for SPED or ELL students? I have a lot of ELL students. So what I have done to get them to figure out Google Classroom is I have screencast with videos so that they can watch me get into it and show them how to do it. And so that has helped a lot. As far as special ed, that is its own kind of can of worms. And so that one is such an access question, and it is so hard. Some of mine have been really, really good, and their parents have been very, very helpful to get them in, and been able to watch the videos and help them. And there's some really good things that help them, but it's really hard for them to be able to do it. And so it's one of those things that they can, but it's been hard. So, I mean, there's not a lot of equity in any of this, no matter what there is. So I wish there was. So I'm trying to make it as equitable as I can. That's kind of the best that I can do. Let's see, there is a question about if there's a function for students to raise their hand in Google Meet. And so I actually haven't had to explore that yet because my students are much older. And so they've been really good about kind of patiently like keeping themselves on mute until I ask a question, and then you can actually see them come off mute. But it looks like somebody already answered that. There's an extension called Nod that allows to hand raise or for them to give a reaction. There's also a chat feature in Google Meet, which has been fantastic because students are able to type questions into it just like you guys are doing now in the Google or in Zoom. Like there's a chat feature in there that's just really helpful. So the students have been using that quite a bit. And so they like the chat feature. They really don't like to turn their cameras on in any way, shape, or form. It is amazing how hard it is to get them to like say hello in anything. So they're having a real hard time for that. So I think Michelle is clarifying for the non-district emails as a function of the district. Yeah, so districts may allow or not allow as well. So all right, let's see.
Yeah, it's always fun.
Since that's the slide of mine anyway.
It's a lot of fun watching the chat room where you have all these techie people and experts in the field kind of just offering more and more information. So I'll have to make sure we put the chat stream up along with everything this time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Exactly. So there's a lot of resources in the chat stream too that I did not even get to as far as questions and things like that. So are there any other questions or anything else that we have not gotten to yet?
It looks like we got about 5 minutes. If there's not any questions, would you have time to go back and look at that whiteboard just so people can see where that's at?
Yeah,
If that would be helpful. I am
I
not
think
an
so.
expert in Google Classroom, so.
That's okay. Let me see if I can get to it at the moment. I have 18 million tabs open. So hold on just a second. Let me close out of a handful of tabs here. I should be able to. So I think Laura's answering a question about the nod feature as well. Okay, there we go. All right, and can you guys get more specific about the whiteboard feature that you want to do? Is it the one in Google Meet? Is that what you're looking for?
I think it
Just to
came up
make sure.
before you talked about Meet, but I'm not sure if whoever asked that question,
Yeah, can you
yes,
guys?
in Meet, I guess. That's what you said, yes.
Yes, okay. So it is the whiteboard feature in Google Meet. All right, let me see if I can get to it while I am in Zoom. I'm not sure if I can. Hold on. I'm not sure if it will let me. Nope. I'm not sure it's going to let me do anything in here. Hold on just a second.
Sounds like a way to crash your computer is what that
I
sounds like.
know, that's what I'm a little bit afraid of, is I'm going to crash my computer. Is that I'm not sure. I don't think it will.
No.
I think it's going to yell at me. I don't think I can, simply because I have both Zoom going on and not. So I might have to not, yeah, I don't think it's going to let me get into any of it. In order to be able, I was like, it's not going to let me get into any of it. But yeah, when you share your screen on Google Meet, there is a whiteboard feature that you can use. And so it depends on whether or not you use your mouse or not, or if you have a screen that allows you to write on it. But there is a whiteboard feature that is there. I just can't actually get to it. But I think if it is helpful, I think, was it Laura or Michelle shared a document, I think back there somewhere, that talks about the whiteboard feature in there. That did it, or if it may be something, I may be able to go in and do a screencast of how to use it and give that to Kyle and Keith once I'm not on my camera for this. I could probably go in and do it. Or actually, I guess Laura just put in a YouTube video also. Perfect.
Somebody already did, so we'll just.
Awesome.
If that
Somebody already
doesn't,
did, so it can save myself the trouble.
so if that doesn't cover it, reach out and
Yeah.
we'll find a way to get you information.
Yeah, we'll make sure to do that, because otherwise, yeah, I think I will crash my computer and or turn off the Zoom, and then we'd be done for the day. So I think it will not let me do that. So it is mad at me.
Yeah, it looks like we just have some
Yeah.
more information. So we'll just kind of keep an eye and see if there's any other questions here.
Okay.
There
you go.
Belabor it. Well, I guess while we're kind of waiting for questions to come in, thanks, Kelly, for sharing this. I've seen my daughter use the Google Classroom, and I think you get it, but then it's kind of good to be able to get a teacher's perspective on it as well. So that was very helpful, because I don't have access to it through our university. So I just kind of have to float around the outside of it. But anyways, thanks. Thanks for sharing that information. It looks like a lot of people got some good information out of this. And I'd like to thanks Kyle and Crystal who've been helping in the chat room and keeping that wrangled, as well as all of our people who've been contributing back and forth all the great information. Thanks to everyone for that. And also just thank you to the Library of Congress for making these webinars possible through the TPS program. And also, thank you, Kelly. As a reminder, we will do professional development certificates for your time here tonight. If you like, there's a link up there that's at bit.ly/PS Teaching Online. That will get you out to a form that you can quickly fill out, do a reflection, and let us know how to get the certificate to you, and then it should zip it right over to you. And if you have any issues with that, just contact us. I'd also like to remind you that we are recording this, and we'll post this up on both our YouTube channel at TPS Colorado and on the TPS Teachers Network. And we've also recorded all the recordings that we've done up to this point, which I think we're counting, I don't even know, a lot, about 15 or 16 of them right now. There's about a lot of information, a lot of things that you can use with Google Classroom in there if you just want to go back and look at it. Also want to mention that next week we're going to be doing 3 more of these, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 4 o'clock Mountain Time. So next week our topics will be online literacy strategies with Dr. Raleigh Shendel again, Colorado history in the elementary classroom, as well as just some really good strategies for working with history education in the elementary classroom with Todd Laugen, Dr. Todd Laugen, and creating online annotated resource sets with the 2 geeky teachers, Laura and Michelle, who are frequent repeat offenders on our webinar series so far, but always great information from them. Let me go back and just see if we had any other chat messages. It looks like we're getting a lot of thank yous here. Kyle's posted up links in there if you need to grab our YouTube channel, the link to the Teachers Network or that certificate link. Other than that, it's been great. I don't see any other questions. And thanks again, Kelly, for have a pleasant evening.
Thank you guys so much.
And have a great weekend as well. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.